Well, I want to share some research with you guys that I'm pretty sure is right on the money here. And I'm going to point to the same area again, the trapezium of the Orion Nebula. But this time we're going to take a different approach. I was a little bit hesitant to share this research at first. I had to think about it because of the implications of it and what it could mean. But I think the reason why all this information, I'm putting it all together, is because it's supposed to happen right now. So I'm going to share it with you, but before I share it with you, I want to stress something, that the understanding of all of these areas, they have a spiritual connection to them also. People like to materialize everything and put everything into the concept of materialism, and that's where we need to stop doing this. We need to understand that these areas also have a spiritual connection to them as well. This is a video I created a while back for Manly Hall's Jacob Ladder, 7 Planets in 7 Minutes, just to kind of get through it for everybody. And he goes through all the planets, and this is what the ancients believe, because this is an understanding of the atom cadmon. It's the same thing. And the ancients believe that the sun, our sun in the solar system, represents the heart. This area up here represents the heavenly heart, which is the pineal gland, and is also the invisible central sun, which is our black hole, our immediate one, which resides in the center of the Orion Nebula inside the trapezium. And it has a special connotation to it. I'm going to let Manly Hall describe that for you real quick, and then I'm going to show you some interesting things regarding the pyramid and the symbolism behind it, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish up with showing you what I think it means on the material side. However, I want to stress that these things have a spiritual connection as well, and that is extremely important when understanding all this stuff. So listen to him real quick.
Makes the individual almost indestructible. Now, if the individual has followed this line through, he then comes, as the Egyptian mystery shows, and the Eleusinian, and the Bacchic and Osirian mysteries, he comes into the presence of the Great One. In this sense, in Egypt, we follow very closely the story in the Apocalypse of John. For we come to the great figure walking among the candlesticks, carrying the stars. This is a symbol of that which is above these limitations. This is a release in which the individual, having step by step overcome the impediments which he has placed upon himself, or has permitted to society to place upon him through wrong education and wrong laws, that the individual comes into the presence of Osiris in Egypt, and comes into the presence of the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks.
So what he has just done there is he has identified Osiris as being the Orion Nebula, or a part of the Orion Nebula, because this is the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks. It's the one that we see mentioned in Revelation, the throne. It's also the one that we see Ezekiel mention, which is the Merkava of Ezekiel. One of the things you will find from Ezekiel is, I saw a whirlwind come out of the north, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. This is what's described in Ezekiel, a whirlwind. There's also a place in the Bible where it says, God hath his place in the whirlwind. And these are the same things we hear over and over again. We hear in the Gospel of the Egyptians that when Adamus was created, he was the eye of the light. Okay, so this is all referring to a black hole. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look at Osiris. And this is from E.A. Wallace Budge, and I'm going to read what it has here regarding Osiris. The group of wedges which we read, Osari, I'm not going to mention the wedges that he's got here. We'll just go ahead and we'll bypass that, but it says, the first has the well-known meaning of tent, or dwelling, or resting place, and the second has the meaning of eye, and is placed inside the sign for tent. So as you can see, these are the symbols for Osiris, but it's also the symbol for the Eye of Providence. It's the same thing. It's also the symbol in the Jewish mysticism as the Ancient of Days. This is the central invisible sun that it's referring to. The two signs by which are transcribed in Egyptian are a seat and a throne and an eye. Now the sign is followed in the text by two other cuneiform characters. These form the title of Asari and are read in Sumerian, Ludug. Remember, in Sumeria, the ancient seal that we see shows the winged disc, and in the middle of the seal it shows the three belt stars of Orion. When you line up Orion on the seal, you see that the winged disc is associated to the Orion Nebula. It's the same area. And they mean good man or being. Thus we have Asari, the good being. But if we find in the Egyptian text that one of the principal titles of Osiris is Unnefer, that is good being, and it seems clear that this title is the Egyptian translation of the cuneiform characters meaning good man or being. Thus there is little doubt that the Egyptian Asar, which is Osiris, is the equivalent of the Babylonian Asari. And this is why we see the winged disc on top of the tree of life in the Assyrian and Babylonian and all these other cultures. We always see the winged disc on top. It represents the head and it represents universal mind. Okay. Now the interesting thing about this is that the symbol for Osiris is an eye and a tent. Well, what does that tell us? Well, this is Osiris and the tent is Horus. And we know that because of this. Horus is called the door. He's also called the only begotten of Osiris. He's also called the firstborn of the infinite. So if Osiris is called the eye in the tent, then Horus is the first thing out of the eye, which is the tent itself. And when we take a look at the Phoenician characters, Daleth meaning tent door, and we can see that Daleth here, this means door. Daleth means door. And we see that the pyramid of the brain is associated to this area. Now, here is another important thing here, and that is that we see in utterance 600, this king is Osiris. The pyramid of the king is Osiris. This construction of his is Osiris. Now, what does this tell us? Well, this tells us that Osiris, being the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks, the one with the whirlwind, he is the universal mind, which is also mentioned in the vision of Hermes, where Manly Hall mentions that another person says that Osiris is the representation of universal mind. It all comes back to this whole black hole thing. The pyramid, as you see here, as you can see, the pyramid has the same slopes as the trapezium. Okay, the construction of the pyramid is Osiris, and what sits in the middle of this pyramid, or what sits in the middle of the trapezium, is a black hole. Now let's listen to what Nassim Haramein has to say from this real quick.
And I realized, wait a minute, Moses was son of Pharaoh for 40 years, initiated in the highest level of initiation of the Egyptian, before he realized that he was Hebrew and left with the tribes of Israel. So if there was a power source, if the pyramids of Egypt were not just built to bury pharaohs, which I believe weren't built to do that at all, and were actually shielding device or resonating cavities, resonating space-time in a very specific geometric structure, but that they were missing their power source at the center. So I took the dimensioning of the Ark of the Covenant as given in the Bible. It's quite precise. And I got the dimensioning of the inside of the sarcophagus in the Grand Pyramid of Giza. And it was a perfect match. That is, if you have the Ark of the Covenant built, you will be able to lower that box into the sarcophagus of the Grand Pyramid of Giza, okay? And it will fit perfectly on the side and perfectly on the length so that you can lower it with the poles and push the poles in, which are telescopic on the Ark.
So, where he's discussing, the sarcophagus is actually located in the king's chamber. So, when we take a look at the pyramid here, this is where he's discussing, is where the king's chamber is. Now, This is really interesting because, we see in Utterance 600 the construction of the pyramid is Osiris. Osiris is a representation of universal mind. And we see this in the vision of Hermes. We see it in the Gospel of the Egyptians. We see it in the Bible. We see it everywhere. And this is the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks, the one that walks between the 7 lampstands that we see mentioned in the Bible and Revelation. However, it's important to remember, again, that this has a spiritual connection to it as well, a connection to the pineal gland. But it also has an understanding that the pineal gland has a correspondence to the black hole, so the construction of the pyramid is showing us that there is a construction of the black hole. So when we take a look at the Orion Nebula trapezium, which is where they were pointing us to, and they show us the inside layout of the pyramid, they're showing us the layout of some kind of a construction regarding the black hole. Well, let's dig just a little bit deeper into this and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the trapezium of the Orion Nebula right here. Let's just zoom into about 50%. And you may not already be able to see it, but if you can, there is something that looks like a vortex that travels at this angle from up here. You see where this is coming out of the side of this thing? And if you follow your eye right down, you can see this tornado thing, and then it looks like another thing is coming out on this other side. So what I'm going to do is just knock this down a little bit. Now this is all going to make sense when I put the pyramid on top of it. So here we go right here. Now this is really interesting because here is your what looks like an accretion disk right here. This looks like the center of it, somewhere in there, somewhere. And then you have this this pillar coming out on this side, going all the way down to right here, and then you have coming out all the way up here, so you can see the angle that it's at. Now also you have the pyramid, which is also the same slopes as the Great Pyramid, and then also you have this area down here, and it has a very specific angle too. Well, let me turn on the pyramid real quick, and here it is, and we'll knock down the we'll knock it down just a little bit so that we can see what we're looking at here. But I want you to take a look at the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery that comes up right here and moves to where this guy is standing. Now he is standing where the where Nassim Haramein was mentioning that the Ark is located. Now this construction of the pyramid is supposed to be Osiris, and Osiris is an eye in a tent, and the eye represents the vortex that sits in the middle of the trapezium. This subchamber, as it comes down, you can see that it matches the slope of what we're looking at right here. Let me just turn that off for you. You can see that the bottom part that comes out of that thing matches the same slope as what we see on the subchamber. This area right here matching the slope of this. And as we come up here, we see that it cuts off right here, and now it comes up with the same slope that is covering this whole area that looks like this vortex. And the eye, which is the area of the king's chamber where this guy's standing, sits right here. If we turn this off, let's just zoom into 100% real quick. Here's what looks like this accretion disk right here. And this is what looks like this area that's the black hole. That's what it looks like. It could be anywhere in here. Some of the scientists say that it's located between the trapezium stars, and if we read what the Merkava of Ezekiel is talking about the 10 smaller orbs that are attached to the chariot of the sun, which are these smaller, they say the 10 smaller orbs which are in the aura of this area. The aura of the pineal gland are attached to the sun, and they travel with it, which is what these trapezium stars could be, especially since the scientists believe that the black hole is somewhere in between them. Now, sacred geometry tells me that the black hole is somewhere around in here. But the accretion disk right here, which looks rather large, is interesting because it shows that when we put the pyramid on top of this thing, which matches the slopes of the trapezium again. So what I'm getting at here is that if the construction of the pyramid is Osiris, and we see that Osiris is the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks, and it represents universal mind, and it's the pillar. Then what the pyramids are showing us is not only a representation of the pineal gland, but they're showing us the construction of what appears to be a black hole. So if we take a look at the pyramid, we can see that what it's showing us seems to be laid out according to what we see in the Orion Nebula trapezium. So I believe that with the ark being where it is in the king's chamber, and that the construction of the pyramid is Osiris, and it represents the trapezium and the black hole that sits in the middle of it, scientists found a year after me, I believe it has something to do with the black hole. So anyways, yeah, you guys take care, and I will talk to you soon.